Hi BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner, and I finally figured out what I can do to celebrate the 100 subscribers I got. I had a hard time thinking about coming up with an idea, especially because there's people, I know that a lot of people do Q&As and talk about their favorites and stuff like that. Well, this is kind of a favorites video, but talking about my favorite, 100 favorite, or memorable characters. And I tried to stick to books, but I did include a handful of TV characters as well. Okay. So first, number one is a classic, and that is Jane Eyre, about a girl who, her parents, she's an orphan, she lives with her aunt and uncle and cousins, but her uncle dies, and her aunt and cousins bully her, and they don't want her around. They end up getting rid of her because she's misbehaved and dishonest, and they send her to a special school where the one friend she makes dies of TB. And eventually, after staying at the school as a teacher when she reaches adulthood, she eventually moves on and becomes a governess to a little French girl who is the ward of a Mr. Rochester. So Jane is someone who just sticks to her principles, sticks to her belief, and just is very passionate and a strong-willed person. But she's also very quiet and reserved and does not stray too far to cross the line. She does not cross the line that society places. And despite the fact that Rochester probably does not deserve Jane, she loves him fiercely, and he loves her very much. And even when she finds out his dark little secret, she stays true to herself and does not compromise her principles for him. She's a very admirable character, and yeah, she's not perfect, and she's someone that, by today's standards, it's like she could do better. But she is a great starting point for a lot of young girls especially girls getting into classic literature. Next is actually an animal companion character, and then is the title character of a book series by Naomi Novik, the Temeraire series. It's historical fantasy about what if we had dragons during the Napoleonic Wars. And Temeraire is so cute. He's like a puppy dog and a child. He's eager to learn. He is very loving and loyal. And he's feisty and, but he's also a bit impulsive, like a child. Or like a teenager. And in the second book, him and his master, Will Lawrence, who I will talk about later, go to China and see how dragons are treated there. They are respected and admired and treated like equals, and Temeraire wants that for his people in other parts of the world. So he just wants justice and equality, and, it's hard to get in the world that Temeraire is from, and he is, you want him to receive that justice and equality. And want him to be treated fairly, because yes, dragons are scary, and it's understandable why people fear dragons, because they can hurt you. They are dangerous, and they're big. They breathe fire, and they can fly. But at the same time, dragons, are powerful and really, the dragons we get to know, like Temeraire himself, are just great friends and companions for humans. And Temaraire's also very smart. He learns really quickly. He learns like a human does. He absorbs information, and he's also willing to listen when Lawrence is like, "No, you can't do this, and this won't happen overnight." And Lawrence, of course, gives him his reasons, and Temeraire is willing to listen and be patient and to learn patience. And I would love to have a dragon like Temeraire as a pet. I would love to have a dragon as a pet, period. Someone like Temeraire would be a plus. Okay, next is from the Rift War saga. And this is kind of this is a 4-book series by Raymond E. Weiss. It did start out as a coming-of-age story, but then it became kind of a fantasy war story. And in this world is ruled by a dukedom, and the duke has 2 sons. And actually, when I was reading it, I kept thinking of Loki and Thor, and Prince Arutha reminded me of Loki, or who Loki could have been if he hadn't found out the truth and hadn't been so angry and felt so overshadowed by his adopted brother Thor. Because they are very much, reminds me a bit of Loki. He's calculating, he's clever, he, knows how to manipulate people, but also he's a good guy and really cares about his friends and is a good leader. He has potential to be a great leader. And he's not a bad guy. But he also, what is really sweet is that he's really awkward when it comes to his love interest. We meet, his love interest in the 2nd book, and he's just very awkward, and it's kind of endearing how everybody else, with his friends and his family, he's good, he's smooth, and he knows how to bond with them and talk with them, but when it comes to the potential love interest, he has a hard time, which I really like when I see that in male characters. That it's just, you're smooth when you're talking to your friends and stuff, but when it comes to the love interest, then you're nervous, and it's not as easy, and it's awkward, and it's very endearing. Next is so our next 3 characters are, 4 characters are from classics, but one of them is from a different author, and 3 of them are from the same author. So first we have Emma Woodhouse. And it's interesting that people always say that that Jane Austen herself said Emma is a character that only she could love. And now, in these modern times, I think it's not exactly the opposite. I think she's still a polarizing character. But she's a likable character. She's charming and really has good intention, is very sweet. She does whatever, she's trying to genuinely help Harriet Smith because she thinks she knows what's best. And not in it is kind of this will make me look good, but also because she's kind of bored too, because, but also I think she does develop affection for Harriet and a friendship for her. And, she cares about her father, and she really cares about Knightley's opinion of her. Even though she thinks she knows what is best, she still cares about his opinion. And when he calls her out on something towards the end about insulting and being disrespectful to a friend of hers, it really hurts her, and is what makes her turn around and fully redeem herself and become a genuine good person. But she's very vain and selfish and can be cruel at times. But she often does things for her own gain to make herself look good. But she also, like I said, has good intentions and is a genuinely caring person. She's just very spoiled, a bit of a spoiled brat. But not as mean as some spoiled brat characters can be. There's actually a character I'm going to talk about later that's a lot worse than her. And then the next one is Fanny Price from Mansfield Park. I know a lot of people don't love Fanny and get frustrated with her, especially because she doesn't stand up for herself, and they also don't approve of her love interest. But Fanny, you gotta admire Fanny. She puts up with a lot of crap. And no, she doesn't stand up for herself, and maybe she should, but considering the time period and her situation, I think it's understandable that she can't. And Fanny is such a caring, sweet person, too. She's just kinder and is more willing to let people walk all over her. While Emma has a very strong opinion and won't let people walk all over her. She refuses to let people walk all over her. And Fanny, she has to let it happen. She cannot, it's not easy for her to defend herself because she doesn't have a lot of options. And then you have the Crawfords who show up, and at first Henry flirts with her cousins, one of them being engaged. And then when they're gone, all of a sudden he sets sights on Fanny and thinks she's great and is so pleased that she is not like, she doesn't fawn all over him, and he's like, oh, she's just playing hard to get. But then he doesn't, he isn't, she sees right through him. Even when she's pressured by her uncle and aunt because he's handsome and he's rich. She's just like, no, I'm not going to fall for this. I'm not going to let him manipulate me. And besides, her heart belongs to Edmond, her cousin Edmond, who is probably the only nice and kind person to her in this family. Even though he's kind of an asshole to her later, especially when it comes to Mary Crawford. And so you gotta admire her for that. So she may be quiet and reserved, but, she doesn't have a lot of options. She doesn't have any other choices. She's another character like Jane Eyre, who stays true to who she is and her principles. And she holds out for not doing this play that is morally wrong and seen as inappropriate. A play that her uncle would not approve of, and then would get in trouble for performing it. And she refuses to be part of it. And the only reason I think she joined is because Edmond does. And other than that, she's like totally against this, and she barely participates in it. And she ends up being proven right when the uncle shows up and is pretty pissed that they were performing this play. But she's such a great person. And, there's probably a lot of things that I didn't cover. I have not covered in these that Olive from Book Olive has covered. She did a great video in defense of Mansfield Park and Fanny's character. But Olive from Book Olive. Check out that video if you're interested in, like, whether you like the book or not, And then the other Austen character is, of course, everyone's favorite, Elizabeth Bennet. Everyone loves Elizabeth Bennet, and when you get to know her, you can understand why. She's such a confident character. She's strong, confident, very opinionated. She, like, I imagine a lot of booktubers want to relate to her and connect with her, or they want to be her at least. She's someone that is very loyal and loving to her family, even if they got flaws. Like, her mom is very silly and will do anything to get her girls married off. And even though, like, she probably gets why people like Darcy would see her family as an embarrassment, she defends their honor. She defends them to Darcy. And is like, how dare you make fun of my family? And she's, again, another character who stays true to her principles. And a very admirable character. Although she judges very rashly, she is very impulsive. She just, and she just automatically assumes the worst in someone. It's easy for her to believe badly of Darcy after she, when he snubs her and is critical of her family, when Wickham tells her the story about them. And if you haven't read the book, I'm wondering, I feel like if you don't know, if you're not reading the book again, then I think it could come off as this might be true. But if you have not read the book or have seen the movie, then, you might not, I wonder if you might actually believe Wickham's story. Okay, so, and then you have the other character that's not an Austen character is Margaret Hale. Margaret Hale is a lot like Elizabeth Bennet. And I believe Elizabeth Gaskell's novel, North and South, is supposed to be a retelling of Pride and Prejudice. So Margaret, I think if you like Elizabeth Bennet, you would probably like Margaret Hale. She's very strong-willed, very stubborn, very judgmental like Elizabeth, but also very kind when she wants to be, and she's someone, and there are differences, of course. She's a lot more quiet than Elizabeth. She's a lot more passive than Elizabeth, and she doesn't have the same, the silly family to, to defend. And it's just her and her parents. She's an only child, so she's a little more spoiled by her, and favored by her parents, while Elizabeth was more like, her parents got more frustrated with her, although she was a favorite, or at least her mom got frustrated with her. She was her dad's favorite. So they are very similar but different at the same time. Okay, the next two characters are actually Brandon Sanderson characters. And that is first of all, we have Shalon. And Shalon, in both Shalon and then we have Sazed. Shalon and Sazed are characters that are both very philosophical characters. And they're characters I would love to sit down and just have a conversation with and talk about their world and their thoughts on the world and life. And Shalon has this burden just to bear of taking care of her family because something happened. I don't remember what happened, but something happened to her family where she has to go leave her family on her own and find a way to get in the good graces of the princess and get something from her, steal something from her. And she ends up actually being attached to this woman and admires and respects her and becomes her apprentice and is not sure she wants to give it up. And so she's someone she's also very talented, and she's artistic. She's someone that is, again, another young person that's very impulsive, but she's someone that I would love to have just sit down and hang out with, I think, and just talk about stuff, talk about art, talk about life, talk about the worlds we're from. I would love to learn about her home and her thoughts on, While Sazed is the same way, except he's very scholarly, and well, so is she. I think the difference is that they are very different situations, and they both have these burdens, although she has more of a burden than he does, and he's someone that goes through quite a bit. I mean, now I haven't read as a lot in the Stormlight Archives. I have only read part of the first book. I have not finished it yet. But, Sazed, he goes through a lot. And when his worldview is shattered, you feel so bad for him. And it's such a struggle for his character that he goes through. And, you want to give them both a hug. There's a lot of characters on here that I just want to give a hug. And then you have Margaret Hale's love interest, John Thornton. John Thornton is a mama's boy, but not in a weird, creepy way. Like, his mom's just overly proud of him, and it's just him, his mom, and his sister, Fanny. And he has a lot of responsibility. He has to provide for his mom and sister, and he is a manager of a factory. But he's also very honest and genuine. Like, he's very straightforward with his workers. He doesn't lie to them. He doesn't sugarcoat things. He tells them the truth about what's going to happen when they work for him. It ends up being a benefit to him because later there's a character that ends up, like, one of the major characters ends up having to beg to work for him. And it's because of his honesty that they are able to work together civilly and even become close to being friends. He has a bit of a temper, but it's, he's seen a lot and been through a lot, so if something potentially could, like someone smoking a cigarette, he's seen his business has been burnt down. So there's a scene in the beginning of the book where a guy is smoking a cigarette and he gets very upset about it because he's seen what can happen if someone drops their cigarette. He's forced in a lot of positions where he's got a lot of responsibility and has to make some difficult decisions. And I will say it now, I prefer him like I said, I think this is supposed to be a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, and I prefer John Thornton over Darcy, in all honesty. And he's, again, another very passionate character. And like I said, you can kind of understand his relationship with his mom, and why that his mom's so proud of him, to the point of, like, you know, when Margaret turns him down when he proposes to her, and his mom is like, you have no idea who you turned down, and is constantly bragging about her son, which you can't blame her. And like I said, I've seen some weird mother and son relationships in books before, and this is not as bad as some of them. So next is Rochester, Jane Eyre's love interest. Rochester has a lot of issues, and he's a very flawed character, but he's someone that, you know, he's so complex, and both him and another Bronte character are so complex, and, you know, he's not the best love interest, but he does make an interesting love interest, and he does have his good qualities, like, excuse me. Sorry, my dog was scratching on my door. He does have his good qualities. He is really loving, and he had a girlfriend, who he found out was cheating on him, and she's a bit of a, I don't know what she is, but she's a bit of a, put it nicely, a bit of a flirt, and has questionable morals, and she ends up having a daughter, Adele, and, she claims that Darcy is the father, and he's like, nope, I highly doubt that. But he still takes her on as his ward, and gives her shelter, and, you know, gives her gifts and stuff. But he also is not always nice to her. He does treat her unkindly at times, because I think he sees her mother's influence on her. And I think he doesn't want her to grow up and be like her mom. And, you know, but he still can't help seeing her influence. And of course, there's the big thing, which is the wife in the attic, which he believes he was doing her a favor and protecting her, because the asylum would be 10 times worse for this woman. And you can't, and, you know, at least he gave her a place to stay, and she has company up there, and he gives her food and stuff. He doesn't abuse her or anything, as far as I can tell. But I have not read Wide Schabowski yet. So, but he still, you know, so in his mind, he's doing her a favor, letting her stay in his home. But then he tries to have a life without her, to be a life with another woman, because he believes he deserves that, and he lies. So it's a bit on shaky ground. But you can kind of understand his intentions. And I think that this makes a very interesting character. Like, he's not a saint, he's not a good guy, he's not the best guy, not the best love interest, but he's not terrible, you know? I mean, it could be worse. And it does make a very intriguing situation. And, like, there are worse, the Brontes creating, the worst character is Heathcliff, who is full of, like, Heathcliff is another character that I think is memorable, because he is hateful and cruel, and him and Kathy are, like, perfect for each other. But this is the problem, I think, with Wuthering Heights, is people assume it's a romance. You shouldn't do that. But he is such a fascinating character, and you can't help but be, like, riveted by Heathcliff. And you almost feel sorry for him. You can kind of understand his anger and his rage and his need for revenge on these people who bullied him and made him feel like an outsider. And the only person that didn't make him feel like an outsider was someone who was not that great either, was not always that nice. She kind of used him, manipulated him. And he fights right back. And there are just so many interesting characters in Wuthering Heights. Him and Kathy are very memorable. I mean, the whole slew of characters is very memorable, except for maybe the guy in the very beginning. And then we have another revenge character. Edmond Dantes from The Count of Monte Cristo, who becomes the Count, the title character, the Count. Edmond Dantes starts out as a good guy, a nice guy with a great life. And then he loses it all because of jealousy from others. And he's unjustly thrown in prison for 15 years for something he didn't do. And you can understand his rage and his desire for revenge. And the only thing that stops him is that he does, and the only thing that stops him is that he sees the next generation and spends time with them and gets to know them. And so that's the only thing that makes him hesitate. And he tries to help them get out of get away from their parents. And their bad influences. And his whole journey is memorable. Just seeing how he's so calculating and clever and just is able to manipulate things and arrange things so that they go his way, and he can punish the people and reward those who helped him. Punish the people who betrayed him and reward those who helped him, who were still loyal to him. And it's just, his journey is so fascinating and riveting to watch. And then we finally got to a female character, and that is Asgoniska. I don't know if I'm saying it right, from Uprooted, another Naomi Novik book. Asgoniska is someone who, she doesn't think she should have been chosen for this, what she is chosen for. They are part of a village that is being haunted and overshadowed by this dangerous woods that can corrupt you. And their only thing standing between them and the woods is this wizard that they call the Dragon, and every few years he takes a girl as apprentice. And Asgoniska assumes that it will be her friend, and it ends up being not. And even the dragon himself is surprised by this. And she is, one second. Sorry, I just wanted to close my door. She is wild, has a wild magic, and she fights the dragon. She is not someone, not in a, oh, you're evil kind of way, because he's not as evil as they assume he is. He's not a saint, and he kind of treats her horribly at times, badly, I should say. But she is a fighter, and, she's a warrior in her own way, despite the fact that at first she didn't believe she could be. And she's a young adult, a young heroine that you root for, and you want to see her succeed. And you see how strong and confident she is and how powerful she is emotionally and magically. And her journey is just, like I said, I love her journey. Okay, next is actually one of the few characters that are mothers in this. I have a few mothers in here, and a couple actually, and that is Kate Reese from Imaginary Friend by Stephen Schabowski. Kate Reese is such a, she's this woman that is a mother that her husband died, her ex, her ex is an abusive jerk, and she has to do whatever it takes to protect her young son, who ends up taking on this, becomes very gifted. And not magically gifted, but he has this knowledge, and she has to do whatever she can to protect him. And what I really appreciate, because a lot of stories, especially young adult stories, the parents do not believe their children, and they just automatically think it's their crazy imagination. But she is very, like, I mean, at first she doesn't, because this voice in her head tells her, you're a bad mother if you don't give your son the medicine, and, because, you know, he's seen as crazy, but she ends up realizing that's not her voice, and she knows that she's a good mother. And she, you know, decides to do whatever it takes to protect her son, and is very strongly believes in him, and she is a fighter, and she kicks ass to protect her son, and believes him, and believes him about everything, and doesn't think he's just crazy and he's have an active imagination or he's just lying for attention. She actually believes him and fights for him. And I just love how strong he's, and she's doing this on her own. She doesn't even have, like, she ends up getting a new boyfriend in the town who's a great guy, but she's fighting for him for her son on her own. And she's so strong and so, like, admirable. So next we have, okay, so I'm going to talk about 16 and 17 together. We have Roland of Gilead and Garen of Rivia. These two guys are both monster fighters. They're warriors. But they're both quiet and reserved and very cold and unemotional. But because we are inside their head, we can see how they care about the people that they make friends with, that they team up with, that they care, and that they are very passionate and protective of their friends. But they try to keep their distance and do not get emotionally involved because of the risk that they put their friends under. They try to do things on their own, but in turn, they try to make decisions for their friends, and their friends do not like that. Because it's like, you can't trust me to make my own decision, and they keep people they both are characters that keep people at an arm's length, but as the reader can see that they actually genuinely do care about these people, and they are willing to fight for them, to protect them, even at the risk of, or at the expense and risk of their own lives. It's just, they're very similar in that way, you know, in a lot of ways. Next, number 18 is a character from Geralt's world, from The Witcher, and that is Yennefer. Yennefer is a powerful sorceress who's ridiculed and judged and feared, just like Geralt is, and she is sacrificed a lot. She and Geralt are very similar in a lot of ways in how they are towards people and what they sacrifice. But they, of course, go about it in a different way. And Yennefer wants to be a mom. She wants to have kids. And Geralt and Yennefer both, the girl that they are, the princess that they are meant to protect, they form this bond with her, and they really care about her. And for Yennefer, she sees this girl as her child, even though she cannot biologically be a mother, I don't think. I think it's kind of like what they what it says happened to Black Widow, where she can't have kids so she could be a widow. I think it's the same with except for it wasn't forced for Yennefer. I think she chose to do this because she thought that's what she needed, but then she regretted it immediately after, because I think she wants to have, she is realized what she's giving up. And there's actually, I was watching the show, I don't remember the books, like Blood of Elves or the other, the short stories or anything like that. I don't remember the books as well, but I was watching the show and feel like her mistress, her teacher or whatever, I think with the way she reacted to Yennefer being missing, I think she sees Yennefer as a daughter. And I think that's what these group of women as sorcerers, they feel like the only way they can be a parent is their students. But Yennefer she is cold-hearted, but she also expresses having feelings, and she's also snarky and sassy, and is not someone to take anyone's crap. And I love especially female characters that are like that they're snarky and sassy, and just like they bite back, especially in a world where men try to run things and women are bullied into submission. Okay, then this next is another group of characters, and that is the Losers Club from It. This group of young kids who the story starts when they're preteen, 10, 11, 12 years old. They're all bullied for one reason or another, and they go through so much shit. And not only are they bullied at school, but their home lives are terrible. Their whole town is cursed, and they're the only ones who can fight this monster. And they live with the shadow their whole lives. And some of them even repeat the cycles from their childhood that they found themselves in. And it's just, you just want to hug them and say, you can defeat this monster, and you're gonna survive, and you'll be okay. And that, bullies will be bullies, but one day you're gonna escape, and, you're gonna live a good life. Although, who knows if they would have if they hadn't been chosen to fight this monster. And they're all so sweet and have great individual personalities, and I just love these characters. And then we have the character's last name I do not remember, but from Great Expectations. And that is Stella. Stella is such a selfish character. She's very vain, and Miss Havisham has corrupted her since she was a child. And there's a moment when they're adults, and Miss Havisham, she's even mean to Miss Havisham. Miss Havisham is thinking, like, why are you doing me? I am like your mother, and she's not her mother, but, and she's like, well, you made me this way. I am the way I am because of you, so you created a monster. And Miss Havisham doesn't even realize that until it's too late. And she's so manipulative at such a young age. She manipulates Pip and constantly, tricks him, and she uses her beauty to also manipulate him. And she's such a complex character at such a young even at such a young age. And she's just so riveting to watch. And there are a couple of female characters that are horrible women, but they're as women are young girls, but they're just also, it's amazing to watch them and especially at one so young. And I'm sure someone else could easily expand on Stella a lot more than I could. Next we have I think that's okay. I think, wait, did I? Oh, crap. Sorry, you guys, I don't remember how far I went. I think video 2 starts with 21, I think. Okay, so I'm gonna stop here because I already filmed part 2. I had filmed part 1 before, and I just wasn't sure about it. If not, then there will be 5 parts to this video. To this top 100 memorable characters. But I think I did stop at 20. So and the last time I filmed part 1. Okay, so if not, then I will film another part, and there will be 5 videos instead of 2. So, instead of 4. So, if you guys like this video, be sure to give a thumbs up, click subscribe, and click the bell notification if you want to see when I post the videos, and keep an eye out for part 2. And since there are 100 characters here, and I do kind of want to elaborate on them at least a little bit like I did in this video, so, it's probably going to take quite a few videos to talk about all these characters. So I hope you are all staying healthy and safe and enjoying your reading, and I will talk to you all later. All right, bye!